All right, get ready to take a trip from a tiny, unconquerable village in Gaul all the way to the massive, brutal arena of the Roman Colosseum. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most iconic comic book adventures of all time, Asterix the Gladiator. We're going to follow our heroes every single step of the way on their totally impossible rescue mission. So, every one of these adventures kicks off in the exact same spot. The year is 50 BC. All of Gaul has been conquered by the Romans. Well, almost all of it. There's this one small village of incredibly stubborn Gauls that's still holding out, making life a complete nightmare for the Roman legions camped nearby. And at the heart of all this chaos are two main guys. First, you've got Asterix. He's small, super smart, and gets his incredible strength from a magic potion made by their druid, Cacofonix. And then you have his inseparable best friend, Obelix. He actually fell into the cauldron of potion as a baby, which means he's permanently super strong and has a pretty simple outlook on life. Smash Romans and eat a whole lot of wild boar. Now, life in the village is usually a pretty simple cycle of feasting and fighting Romans. But that piece is about to be completely shattered, and not by a Roman legion, but by a truly terrible sound that's going to kick off a journey to the very heart of the empire. Okay, so let's talk about Cacofonix, the village bard. This guy is absolutely convinced he's a musical genius. Everyone else, they know his singing is a complete disaster. I mean, it is so awful, it can literally make it rain, and even the wild boars run for the hills when he picks up his lyre. And right here, this is where our whole adventure really kicks off. A Roman patrol led by a prefect named Caligula. Here's this unique talent. But instead of running away like everyone else, they make this absolutely hilarious mistake. They think his voice is the Gauls' secret weapon. So what's their big plan? Capture him and give him to Julius Caesar as a gift. So when the villagers find out he's missing, you can probably guess what happens next. Look, they can't stand his music, but he's their bard, and nobody messes one of their own. Fueled up on magic potion, they launch a massive assault on the Roman camp. It's not even a battle, really. It's just total demolition. After the dust settles, the Roman commander is just left completely humiliated. He finds out Cacofonix is already on a ship headed for Rome, a present for Caesar. And his final order, it just perfectly sums up how crushed he is. Don't anyone ever mention this battle to me again. That tells you everything you need to know about the kind of terror these Gauls inspire. Okay, so the Roman camp is smashed, but Cacofonix is already on his way to Rome. So, of course, Asterix and Obelix volunteer for the rescue mission. You're going to want to see how they pull this off, so if you're enjoying this, now's a great time to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. All right, the stage is set. Our two heroes have to travel deep into enemy territory to save a guy whose music they absolutely can't stand. The road to Rome is going to be packed with danger, pirates, and, you guessed it, a whole lot of punching. So let's break down what they have to do. First up, they've got to find a boat to get them across the sea. Then they have to actually survive the trip. And if, and it's a big if, they make it to Rome, they're going to have to deal with all the city's red tape just to get a single clue about where Cacofonix is. So they get their first bit of luck with this guy, Economicresis, a super cheerful Phoenician merchant. He agrees to give them a lift to Rome. And why would he do that? Well, having two Gauls with super strength on your ship is basically the best insurance policy you could ask for against, pirates. And hey, speak of the devil. The infamous Redbeard pirates spot them and get ready to attack. But what happens next is just a masterpiece of destruction. With a few punches, the pirates are taken care of in seconds. And their ship? Well, it ends up like it always does, a pile of floating splinters. It's a running joke that just never gets old. After that little bit of excitement, the rest of the trip is pretty smooth. But arriving in Rome? For these two guys from a tiny village, it is a total sensory overload. The air smells like a mix of street food and crowded alleys. There's the constant noise of chariot wheels on stone and the 1,000 people shouting. It is a completely different world. And who's the big boss of this whole operation? None other than Julius Caesar himself. Now, he's basically the final boss of this story, even if he has no idea yet. This is a man who's conquered the known world, but he gets bored really easily. He's always demanding bigger and better entertainment, and now he gets to decide the bard's fate. So, after, smashing their way through a few Roman patrols for information, they finally get a lead. Turns out Caesar was, let's just say, not a fan of the bard's singing. In fact, he sentenced him to be thrown to the lions at the Circus Maximus. And that leaves them with only one totally insane plan. They have to become gladiators. I mean, the stakes are just through the roof now. Our heroes have to survive gladiator school and then the arena itself. We are heading right into the grand finale, so if you're hooked on this story, make sure you hit that subscribe button to see how it all goes down. All right, here we go. The final act. We're in the grand, brutal spectacle of the Roman circus, and Asterix and Obelix are about to give Caesar and the people of Rome a show that they are never, ever going to forget. Just try to picture this. You're backstage at the Circus Maximus. The air is heavy with the smell of sweat, fear, and hot sand. You've got these tough-as-nails gladiators getting ready for a life-or-death fight. And then there are our two Gauls who look, well, they look like a couple of lost tourists who took a seriously wrong turn. First up, the chariot race. The Romans are pros, right? But Obelix, he's not really a rules kind of guy. After the horses get scared off, he just decides to pull the chariot himself. The whole thing just turns into absolute chaos, and it ends with this spectacular crash as Obelix smashes his way across the finish line, winning because he's the only one left. Okay, now for the main event, the gladiator fights. But here's the thing, our guys have zero interest in actually fighting to the death. So instead, they just turn this super violent spectacle into a bunch of silly games. They start playing tag and leapfrog, totally confusing the professional gladiators and leaving them in a dazed pile without even throwing a real punch. And the crowd, they absolutely love it. They have never seen anything like this. Even Caesar, who was furious at first, can't help but be won over by how entertaining it all is. He stands up and gives his verdict. Gauls, you are brave men. The people of Rome are happy. I declare you the winners. At this point, he really has no choice but to give the crowd what they want. And just like that, victory. They've done the impossible. They conquered the Circus Maximus, not with swords, but with chokes. All that's left is to claim their prize and head home. So Caesar, as the winner's prize, says they can have whatever they want. And their request? It's simple. They just want their friend back, the bard Cacofonix. Caesar agrees, and the bard is brought out completely clueless that he was just moments away from being lion food. Mission accomplished. So, with Cacofonix safe and sound, Asterix and Obelix say goodbye to Rome. They hop back on Economechus's ship, which is now full of goods, and set a course for home, leaving behind a city that's still buzzing about the weirdest gladiatorial games in its history. And how does this story end? Well, the only way an Asterix story can, with a giant feast back in the village to celebrate our hero's return. Everybody's there chowing down on wild boar. But to make sure everyone can actually enjoy the party, Cacofonix is tied to a tree and gagged. For once, the only sound is happy chewing. And there you have it. The story of how two Gauls went up against the entire Roman Empire and won with a sense of humor. If you had fun with this breakdown of a total classic, do us a huge favor and hit that like and subscribe button. We have plenty more of these adventures to get into. So, what's the big takeaway here? It kind of answers that old question, right? What happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? Well, in the world of Asterix, the answer is pretty simple. Sometimes the immovable object just has to learn to move.